At the northern edge of the Crisis Kingdom, Duke Ellen, Lord of the Frontier, gathers all his men, prepared to face the undead army advancing straight toward the city. Confronted by their sheer presence, he quickly realizes that the enemy's strength is far beyond what he and his troops can endure. Among the army stands the undead knight Durian, a figure who spreads terror to anyone who crosses him. Durian's might is so overwhelming that even 10 elite knights fighting to the bitter end cannot guarantee victory against him. Witnessing this, the soldiers grow terrified. They plead with the Duke, insisting that they cannot win and urging him to order a retreat. They argue it would be wiser to ready a siege than to engage directly with the undead horde. Though Ellen shares their fear, he reminds them that the northern wall has already collapsed. They now stand as the final barrier, and if the undead breach the gates, the kingdom itself will fall. With resolve, he tells his men that no matter how, they must hold the line against the enemy. Suddenly, an unknown rider speeds past the troops, charging recklessly at the undead. Shock spreads among the soldiers as they question who would rush forward so carelessly. In that instant, they recognize him. It is Urin Rox, sent from the southern Marquisate of Rox. Carefree and bold, this rider is none other than the protagonist, a fighter wielding daggers. Though aware of his reputation, the soldiers doubt he can match Durian. They conclude daggers cannot bring down such a monster. Yet before they finish that thought, Urin strikes, driving his dagger into Durian's head. In disbelief, they watch as the knight's severed head flies, and his body begins dissolving into nothingness. The sight leaves the soldiers stunned, unable to accept what unfolds before their eyes. Urin, unfazed, continues his assault, hurling daggers at the undead soldiers. One by one, each enemy melts away until only dust remains. Before long, Urin stands alone, the battlefield cleared. The soldiers, trying to process what they witnessed, slowly grasp that it is no illusion. Some whisper if he might be a saint sent by the heavens. Hearing this, Urin laughs, knowing how far that is from reality. After the battle, he pauses to check his status screen, discovering that he has gained valuable experience points. Apparently, he had used a poison known as Firebone Mountain, a toxin infamous for being potent enough to melt even the marrow of the undead. Since Urin wielded it in battle, the poison itself gained immense experience. Urin has no issue seizing every advantage as long as it benefits him. 6 months earlier, our protagonist had opened his eyes in an unfamiliar place. He found himself lying on a king-size bed inside an extravagant chamber. As confusion set in, a voice called him young master. Looking up, he saw a stunning female knight standing before him. While admiring her beauty, he noticed her attire appeared unfamiliar, unlike anything he had seen before. The knight asked if he was feeling well, and before he could respond, she announced she would summon the priest. As she turned to leave, Urin called after her, insisting he had a question. Yet, she ignored him entirely and walked out. Once she was gone, Ur climbed from the bed and approached the mirror. What he saw struck him with absolute horror. He screamed in shock upon realizing he had become a chubby, unattractive boy with a punchable face. Panic flooded him as he wondered where his previous handsome, middle-aged appearance had vanished. He could not comprehend why he was now trapped in this pudgy, awkward body. Thinking perhaps it was only a dream, he considered going back to sleep to wake as himself again. But before he could, the priest entered the chamber accompanied by the household's head and the same female knight. The head of the house glared down at him with an intimidating presence. The priest grasped Urin's hand to examine his pulse. As this happened, the terrifying man snarled that Urin was nothing but a disgrace, demanding to know why he finally chose to wake. Fear froze Urin as he struggled to guess who this furious figure was. The priest attempted to calm the man, reminding him that Urin had just regained consciousness and could be punished later. After examining him, the priest was surprised to find no serious injuries. His mind seemed stable, and his body had healed completely. Though the priest called this a relief, the head of the house disagreed, claiming Urin would have been better off dead. The tension grew worse when a man shouted that Urin had assaulted his fiancée. Stunned, Urin could not understand a word of what was going on. The old man's rage only escalated as he berated him further, shouting that 19 years old, Urin still refused to grow up. The head of the house shouts again, berating Urin as useless since his brother has already awakened his aura, while Urin only grows fatter by the day. At the mention of the word aura, something sparks inside Urin's mind. The man goes on, telling him to apologize to her once he recovers. Urin is baffled, unsure who he means by her. This triggers another scolding as the man angrily reminds him that he is speaking of his fiancée, Ilya. He warns Urin that if she does not forgive him, he is completely finished. Still unsure, Urin asks again for confirmation, and the man repeats Ilya's name while demanding that he stop bringing shame to the Rock's family. Finally, the man calls him by his name, Urin. At that moment, Urin's fear is confirmed. He realizes he is none other than Urin Rocks. If that is the case, then the furious man standing before him must be Marquis Wellington Rocks. The Marquis hears his son utter his full name and explodes in rage. Whirling around, he slaps Urin hard across the face, furious that he dared to call his own father by name. Urin collapses to the ground, stunned, and before Wellington can strike him again, the priest and the female knight quickly restrain him. Left on the floor, Urin begins replaying his choices in life, unable to process what is happening. Overwhelmed, he loses consciousness, hoping desperately that he will awaken from this nightmare. But when he opens his eyes again, he is horrified to find himself still in the same chamber, with the female knight watching over him. He wonders why he cannot wake up if this is only a dream. The knight approaches, asking a trivial question about whether he is awake. Determined to confirm his suspicions, Urin calls her by the name Erin. To his dread, the woman responds to it. Urin then presses further, asking Erin to confirm why he had been bedridden. She explains that he had pursued Ilya, only to be beaten so severely that he collapsed unconscious. Erin explains that Urin had actually assaulted his fiancée in her room, but she turned the situation around and mercilessly beat him until he finally blacked out. Urin clutches his head in despair, as if recalling something dreadful. Erin, puzzled by his reaction, wonders what is wrong with him, but Urin already knows he is completely doomed. Forcing himself to calm down, he faces the grim truth he has somehow awakened inside the very web novel he once wrote. Yet the cruel twist is that he did not become the protagonist. Instead, he has taken the place of the pathetic villain, a worthless fool who antagonizes the hero and meets a miserable death. Overcome with panic, he begins to flail again, prompting Erin to question his strange behavior. Urin shouts that he has landed inside a trash story, not even a proper webtoon. The Urin Rocks he now inhabits is a disgrace, a talentless, skill-less parasite who never trains and only clings to his family's name as heir. Eventually, this pitiful character loses his fiancée to the hero, and in a jealous rage, he attacks. But this foolish choice leads only to his brutal defeat and eventual death in a filthy back alley. Now trapped in the body of this loser, Urin agonizes over how he can possibly survive. Though he is unsure of his abilities in this fantasy world, he does at least remember the opportunities and hidden treasures the protagonist has not yet discovered. With that knowledge, he resolves that his only hope is to prepare ahead of time. He tries to rise from bed, but his bloated body betrays him, and he collapses to the floor with a thud. Erin rushes over, concerned, asking if he is all right. With frustration playing on his face, Urin snaps that he is anything but fine. In that instant, he suddenly perceives the status screen. Through it, he can view Erin's stats. Her traits include level 2 Swift Sword, Clear Mind, level Aura, and level Adaptation. Her affection level toward him, however, sits firmly at 0. Relieved to have summoned the window at last, Urin dismisses her, saying he feels better. Obediently, Erin accepts his words and begins to leave the room. As Erin walks away, Urin studies her stats carefully. He is not shocked to see that she is far stronger than an ordinary knight, but what unsettles him is her affection level resting at 0. What worries him even more is the fact that there even is an affection option on the status window at all. He wonders if this strange mechanic exists simply because he used to play so many dating sims. The thought makes him groan at how ridiculous the world building of this place is. Still, he recalls the affection option again, considering whether it explains Erin's odd behavior toward him. Deciding not to linger on it, he returns to the mirror, still frustrated with the wretched body he now inhabits. At that moment, the status window suddenly opens, displaying his own stats. Excited, Urin eagerly examines them, but his enthusiasm crumbles almost instantly when he sees the pathetic results. For his special condition, the system bluntly lists morbid obesity, which is painfully obvious already. His trait is the Eye of the Creator, though it remains stuck at level 1. He also possesses the 4 Heavenly Venom Arts, yet this ability is sealed for now. However, one statistic catches his eye. His synchronization rate is an extraordinary 99.9%. Among all the trash, only the Venom Arts stand out as remarkable. It hits him that these arts were lifted directly from the wuxia webtoon he adored. That story featured a beautiful heroine, and the core martial path centered on poison techniques and hidden weapons. The legendary 4 Heavenly Venom Arts. Realization dawns on him that this world is nothing more than a strange fusion of stories and games he once knew. For the first time since arriving, a flicker of hope enters his mind. If he can truly unlock and master the Venom Arts, then perhaps survival is possible. A smile spreads across his face as he clings to the thought that he has finally found a path forward. After all, in those wuxia novels, there was a renowned sect from Sichuan province, an ancient clan feared for their mastery of poisons and their deadly hidden weapons coated in toxins. Yurin is left baffled, wondering why the legendary Sichuan Tang clan even exists in this world, since this setting is supposed to be medieval fantasy, not wuxia. Later, Wellington hears from Aaron that Yurin has managed to get back on his feet. Curious, he asks how the boy is doing, and Aaron reports that his condition is still poor. He stumbled badly when he tried to stand. She insists that his body remains weak. Wellington frowns, recalling that the priest declared his injuries fully healed, which strikes him as odd. He then presses Aaron, asking if she has noticed anything unusual about Yurin's behavior. Normally, Yurin is infamously stubborn, yet earlier he had accepted the order to apologize to Ilya without a single protest. To Wellington, that kind of compliance is deeply out of character. Still, he brushes it off, confident that by tomorrow his son will return to his usual troublemaking self. Aaron, however, quietly disagrees. She voices her belief that Yurin may change someday. Wellington is stunned by her words. For him, the thought is absurd. Yurin's father has already lost hope, yet Aaron still dares to hold on to some. He tells her bluntly that she is placing her faith in something that will never come to pass. A flicker of regret crosses his mind as he admits he should have let Aaron live her life as a knight, instead of binding her to a hopeless young master like Yurin. But despite his harshness, Aaron cannot shake her conviction. She cannot explain it, but deep in her heart, she feels that Yurin is different. The next day, her belief is tested when Yurin shocks her by asking for directions to the training hall, insisting he wants to start exercising his body. Aaron is speechless, unable to believe what she just heard. When he presses her to lead the way, she stares at him in disbelief. Noticing her hesitation, Yurin calmly asks if there's a problem with his request. By now, he has realized that the Eye of the Creator allows him to view stats. But as for the mysterious Sichuan Tang clan techniques, he still has no idea how to unlock them. His best guess is that his obesity is hindering his progress. Because of this, he wants to train his body until he figures out another solution. As he and Aaron walk through the mansion, Yurin is struck by the size of the garden, comparing it to several stadiums combined. After only a few minutes, he is already sweating and exhausted. The thought of exercising in his room crosses his mind, but he knows himself too well. If there's a bed nearby, he will simply give in and sleep. He is wise enough to realize that training in his room would be useless. As they pass by servants and maids, the Eye of the Creator reveals their thoughts. Every worker he encounters either dislikes him or despises him outright. Yurin doesn't hold it against them. After all, the old Yurin had been a complete piece of trash who mistreated everyone in the mansion. Eventually, they reach the 3rd training hall. By then, Yurin is panting heavily, completely out of breath. Aaron explains that the 1st and 2nd training halls are reserved for knights, leaving the 3rd hall open for him. But upon stepping inside, they find someone already in the middle of a session. Yurin checks the man's affinity and discovers the worst reading he has seen yet. This man doesn't just dislike him. He hates him to the core and harbors a desire to kill him. The man is Rielan. The moment he spots Yurin, he strides over to greet him, putting on a calm, respectful act since Aaron is present. But Yurin, reading beneath the surface, knows full well that Rielan is itching to rip his head from his shoulders. When Ray greets him formally, Yurin panics and blurts out the man's name in shock. Ray responds with a smile, but Yurin quickly pulls Aaron aside, asking if something happened between him and Rielan. Aaron is baffled that Yurin doesn't remember. She explains that years ago, Yurin's father had forced him into training. In his anger, Yurin summoned Rielan, who was only a trainee at the time. Acting like a true villain, Yurin mocked him, inflicted a scar on his face, and laughed about it, as if it were entertainment. After that incident, his father practically gave up on trying to make him train. Hearing this, Yurin is horrified by how vile his old self truly was. He realizes that Rielan has every reason to hate him, and he is not about to sit idly by to see what revenge Rei has in store. He suggests that they leave quickly and asks Eren if there is another training hall he can use alone. Eren tells him there's a fourth one, but it is far away and poorly equipped. She explains that it is little more than an empty field, but Yurin immediately declares that this is exactly what he needs. Since he wants to lose weight, he insists on doing it the proper way. Realizing that she cannot change his mind, Eren reluctantly leads him to the fourth training hall. When they arrive, Yurin is surprised to find throwing knives laid out on a table. He recalls that the Sichuan Tang clan specializes in knives and small weapons. Picking one up, he hopes to show some talent with it. He throws the knife with all his strength, but it falls short of the target and drops to the ground. Embarrassed, Yurin quickly turns to Eren and says he was only throwing it for fun, pretending it was nothing serious. He realizes that what he truly needs to work on first is his stamina, so he decides to run laps around the training yard. Eren silently watches him as he tries to recover from his embarrassing throw. Yurin starts running, telling her she is free to train however she wants. But after only a few laps, he nearly collapses from exhaustion. Later, word reaches his father that Yurin has begun training. This shocks him, though he doubts it will last. Unexpectedly, Yurin continues his routine for 3 full weeks without skipping a single day. The results are striking. In just that short time, he loses a tremendous amount of weight, and his appearance changes so much that even Wellington is astonished. For the first time, Wellington feels proud of him and begins to address him as his son. Without the layers of fat, Yurin's handsome features finally show through, and Wellington wonders if his son has truly changed. Yurin himself stands before his mirror, marveling at the difference. Yet despite his progress, the Sichuan Tang clan trait still refuses to awaken. He decides to give it 1 more month, and if nothing happens, he will steal everything meant for the true protagonist. At that moment, Eren enters with his meal. The dish is called chine soup, and though its name is plain, it is a nutritious stamina food that burns fat and builds muscle. In Arak's family, it is tradition to eat it after every training session. Yurin groans at the sight of it, unable to believe he has to eat the soup again. Eren asks if he is already tired of it, and he admits that he is. He complains that he has eaten nothing but chine soup for 3 straight weeks. Eren fixes him with a stern, piercing stare. With a serious tone, she asks him what it is that he truly wants. She wants to know if his true goal is to become a knight or if he only wishes to lose weight. Yurin firmly declares that he wants to become a knight, and Eren tells him that he has no choice but to eat the chair and soup, reminding him that even the head of the household eats it after training. She scolds him to stop complaining and just eat. Yurin reluctantly agrees, realizing that although he dislikes the soup, it has helped him throughout the past 3 weeks. He decides to keep eating it until he eventually grows too tired of it. Taking a spoonful, he notices the taste is oddly different from the other days, but he continues eating. Suddenly, a status window appears, warning him that he has ingested poison. Shocked, Yurin stares at the screen, but then he realizes it is actually a blessing. This unexpected condition fulfills the requirement to awaken the Sichuan Tang clan trait. He smiles, knowing this marks the beginning of his true journey. Meanwhile, Wellington stands by the window, as always, admiring his son. A knock sounds at the door, and he invites the visitor in. It is his second wife, Ka, carrying tea. She notices her husband staring outside and asks what he is looking at. Wellington lies, claiming he was admiring the beauty of the garden. Ka seizes the chance to praise herself, saying she has been tending the garden personally. Playing along, Wellington compliments her skill. Then, Ka's instincts take over. She steps behind him and wraps her arms around him, asking when he will finally declare her son, Colin, as the heir, just as he promised. She presses him to make the decision soon, since he had already mentioned it before. But Wellington shocks her by saying it may take longer than expected. Ka's expression hardens as she reminds him he swore to name Colin heir within a month. Wellington admits he said that, but explains that Yurin has unexpectedly come to his senses. Since Yurin is the eldest son, he now believes Yurin could prove to be a worthy successor. Ka forces a smile, telling him she has also heard about Urin's sudden change. She claims she is pleased the boy has finally matured. Willington bursts into laughter, telling Ka he refuses to believe Urin came to his senses just because his wife beat him. Ka quickly shifts the discussion back to the successor, pressing him on what he intends to do. Willington explains that Urin has only been training for 3 weeks, and he wants to observe him longer before deciding. Still, he assures Ka that if Urin reverts to his old ways, he will immediately hand the heir's position to Colin. Hearing this, Ka turns to leave, telling her husband she will wait for him in the bedroom. Once outside, she can barely contain her rage, nearly stumbling as she storms off, swearing she will show Urin exactly what she is capable of. Meanwhile, Urin realizes at last that the true condition for unlocking the Sichuan Tang clan ability is to ingest poison, and he has just done so. Curious, he studies the status window to identify what was hidden in the soup. It reveals a special herb known for causing paralysis. Although it is medicinal, the plant carries toxins, harmless to adults in tiny amounts, but dangerous if consumed regularly, leading to paralysis and eventual death. Urin is still staring at the window when Aaron steps inside, asking if he no longer wants the food. Snapping out of his thoughts, Urin apologizes and hurriedly eats. Still, one troubling question lingers. Who slipped the poison into his meal? He knows poison alone cannot kill him, but he senses the storyline has already changed. It suddenly strikes him that Colin has not yet been officially named heir, which should have happened around this time. Perhaps the succession was delayed because of his sudden training, and the one who poisoned the food is likely from Colin's side. After finishing, the system notifies him that weak paralysis poison has been unlocked as part of his skills. Smiling faintly, Urin turns to Aaron, saying the meal was so delicious it moved him to tears. He then asks to be left alone, and Aaron quietly agrees, urging him to rest before leaving the room. After Aaron leaves, Urin stands before the mirror and demands the Sichuan Tang clan reveal itself to him. At that moment, his stats appear in front of him. He has unlocked new abilities, including mild poisoning, but his overweight status still lingers. On top of that, his synchronization rate has dropped to 97%. Curious, Urin studies his traits further and sees that many remain locked. The most powerful techniques are still inaccessible, requiring other conditions to be fulfilled. He is amazed at the sheer number of poisons listed on the panel, with the final one being level 30. To reach it, he must unlock every level before it, but even to start, he needs an internal technique. Urin realizes the Tang clan relies on internal energy to properly wield poison. Switching to the martial arts section, he sees 4 techniques available to him: the dark poison arts, the thunder needle arts, the 10,000 venoms, and divine energy. As a fan of the Tanglan story, he instantly recognizes which path is best. The dark poison arts focus strictly on poisons, while the thunder needle arts revolve around hidden weapons. The 10,000 venoms divine energy, however, though more time-consuming to master, offers mastery over both poison and hidden weapons. Without hesitation, he chooses the 10,000 venoms divine energy. The moment his decision is made, a strange current surges through his body, forcing him to circulate it immediately. He rips off his shirt and sits in meditation. Strange energy courses through him, and he realizes this is qi. He carefully guides it through the correct meridians, storing it in his dantian to cultivate inner strength. Lost in deep focus, Urin unknowingly remains in this state all night. Despite not sleeping, he feels no fatigue. His body has already begun changing without his awareness. He has concentrated his qi to the point where he senses it everywhere, even discerning the number of birds outside his window without turning to look. Urin examines his 10,000 venoms divine energy and discovers he is currently at the 1-star level, granting him access to 10% of its full power. Suddenly, a familiar aura approaches the door, and when it opens, Aaron steps inside. She finds Urin meditating on the bed and is surprised to realize he has not slept the entire night. Concerned, she warns him that this is dangerous and suggests he rest for the day. However, Urin refuses, explaining that he feels completely fine and is in peak condition, so he must continue training. Aaron leaves to prepare breakfast, but notices that Urin's body is starting to bulk up. Later, when he arrives at the training yard, Urin picks up one of the throwing knives. Standing before the target, he is startled to see a crosshair suddenly appear in his vision, just like in a first-person shooter game. Using it to aim precisely, he hurls the knife with full force while Eren watches closely. To her shock, the knife lands on target with perfect accuracy, unlocking the Tang clan's hidden weapon skills. Unable to hold back her astonishment, Eren walks up to him and asks what he just did. Eren feigns ignorance, claiming he has no idea and suggesting it might simply be the result of his past month of training. Eren, however, shakes her head, unconvinced. Eren realizes this is the first time he has ever seen her genuinely flustered, so he proposes trying again. Feeling fiery energy surging within him, he assumes an even stronger stance and throws the knife again. This time faster, sharper, and more powerful. The knife strikes dead center, cracking the target board in half and leaving Eren completely stunned. She stares at Eren in disbelief, pointing out that he has just shattered the target. Eren only smiles, though inwardly he realizes that the crosshair appearing in his vision is practically a cheat code. In truth, he had once been obsessed with an FPS game called Battle Attack, even winning first place in a local cafe tournament. Eren raises her voice, demanding to know what he just did, but Eren dodges the question and instead asks if she feels anything different about him. She studies him carefully before answering, pointing out that he looks slimmer compared to yesterday. The mention of weight shocks Eren, but Eren explains further. His constant training and drinking the special soup have been making him lose weight. Still, the change seems far too drastic to have happened overnight. Though surprised, Eren is most relieved that Eren cannot sense the inner energy flowing within him. That proves he is the only one in this world capable of using chi, and no one else can detect it. Feeling reassured, he grows confident in his newfound power and continues his practice. He picks up the knives again, launching them one by one with pinpoint accuracy, impressing Eren to no end. Finally, she steps forward and asks to try it herself. She mimics his stance, throws a knife, and watches in frustration as it bounces harmlessly off the target. Eren laughs, teasing that he's glad there's finally something Eren can't do. Glancing back at his status window, he notices a newly unlocked ability, Straight Cut. This skill allows him to throw with even greater speed and force, not just with weapons, but with any object he picks up, each strike guided by perfect precision. Intrigued, Eren decides to test it immediately. While Eren sulks over her failure, he asks her to step aside. To her shock, she sees him holding a broken wooden sword. With energy coursing through his body, Eren takes aim, channels the Straight Cut, and hurls the splintered weapon at the target. To Eren's utter shock, the wooden sword smashes the target to pieces. Horrified, she screams and demands to know what kind of power is flowing through Yure's veins. Eren, looking uneasy, brushes it off as nothing more than the power of practice. But Eren isn't naive. She knows such a feat is impossible. Pressing the matter aside, Eren pleads with her for a favor. He knows she reports every detail of his actions to his father, but he begs her not to reveal this incident, at least for now. Eren is reluctant to agree, but Eren assures her that he is simply testing a few things and promises to explain everything once the time is right. All he asks for is a little time to sort things out. With no other option, Eren agrees. Later that day, Eren trails one of the workers, a man named Peru. Activating the Creator's Eye, he learns that Peru specializes in poison, though his affinity toward Eren remains neutral. At once, Eren realizes that Peru is the culprit he has been searching for, the only one capable of slipping poison into his meals unnoticed. Summoning the spectral arrow in his hand, Eren marks Peru as his target and fires. The strike delivers a paralytic venom that leaves behind a faint green streak. The worker collapses before he even understands what happened, unconscious on the ground. Eren, pleased with his success, checks the status window and sees the paralysis will last for 1 hour. Dragging the limp body into a deserted warehouse, Eren waits until Peru finally regains consciousness. As the worker awakens, he sees Eren looming over him with a dark smile, exuding menace. Peru instantly realizes the danger he's in. Eren leans forward, voice sharp, warning him to answer truthfully if he wants to live through the day. He asks outright if Peru was the one who slipped poison into his soup. To make things clear, Eren instructs him to blink once for yes and twice for no. He asks Peru again if he was the one who poisoned him, and Peru blinks once in confirmation. Eren then follows up, asking if the poison used was Hanyang herb, and Peru blinks once more. Relieved that Peru is cooperating, Eren presses further, asking if Kina ordered the poisoning. This time, Peru blinks twice, denying it. Anger flashes across Urin's face as he pulls out a knife, warning Peru to reconsider his answer. He makes it clear that lying would be a grave mistake, assuring him that he has ways of uncovering the truth. He threatens to slit Peru's throat if he dares to deceive him. Urin repeats the question, and to his surprise, Peru sticks with his denial, insisting it wasn't Kina. Realizing Peru is being honest, Urin is left wondering who truly gave the order. Deciding to resolve that mystery later, Urin pulls out a pill and forces it into Peru's mouth, telling him is a paralytic poison. Once Peru swallows it, Urin explains that he now has just 1 month to live, unless he receives the antidote. He warns that if the antidote is not taken in time, every internal organ in Peru's body will rot away. Terrified, Peru trembles, knowing he has been trapped. Urin then places his hand on Peru's head and channels his power, removing the effects of the paralysis. Free to move again, Peru stares at him in fear. Urin demands once more to know who ordered the poisoning. This time, Peru gives in and confesses. It was Knight Captain Cox Livingstone. Urin is stunned by the revelation. Peru continues, explaining that Cox has been plotting to slowly kill Urin with illness over the course of a year. What's worse, Cox is Ka's older brother, and his position as Knight Captain came from a marriage to the Marquis. Urin realizes his suspicions were not entirely off. The two are clearly in league with each other. With cold precision, Urin hands Peru a sheet of paper, upon which is written a list of deadly poisons. Since Peru is highly skilled with poisons, Urin believes he can make use of him to obtain rare toxins from the black market. He orders Peru to take money from Karox and purchase every poison listed on the paper, starting with the one he already possesses. Shocked, Peru hesitates and nervously asks about Urin's intentions with the poisons, but Urin cuts him off coldly, reminding him that he was never given permission to ask questions. Peru quickly apologizes, and Urin dismisses him, telling him he is free to leave. Just before Peru exits, Urin gives one more command, that from this moment onward, he wants large amounts of poison hidden in his meals. Peru is stunned, left in disbelief by the order. Once back in his room, Urin bursts into laughter, celebrating his successful bluff. In reality, the pill he forced on Peru earlier was nothing more than dried leaves pressed together. He managed to convince Peru that his body was full of deadly poison, giving him complete leverage. Knowing that dangerous times lie ahead, Urin realizes it is now crucial for him to master the martial arts of the Sichuan-Tang clan. Something ominous is approaching, and he must be prepared. The next night, Peru arrives with a collection of poisonous herbs and lays them out on the table before Urin. Examining them carefully, Urin identifies each one with ease. The first is Hanyang herb, the second is Ukrupka, and the last is the wooden vein leaf. Peru is stunned that Urin can name them without hesitation, unaware that Urin's status window reveals their true identities. Urin then questions why Peru even bothered bringing additional poisons when a Hanyang herb alone could have killed him. Peru explains that while Hanyang herb is effective, it works slowly, and once resistance develops, it lingers in the body even longer. However, when Ukrupka is added after the symptoms begin, its effects are multiplied, making the combination far deadlier. Urin asks Peru how he became so knowledgeable about poisons, and Peru explains that he was sold to the Livingstone family at the age of 8, where he was trained under a poison master. Urin then asks if there were others like him, and Peru replies that there were originally 20 children, but all of them died, leaving him as the only survivor. Urin isn't surprised, knowing that children with low resistance to toxins cannot endure poison training, but he notices Peru's deep hatred toward the Livingstone family and quietly decides to exploit it. After the discussion, Urin praises Peru for his efforts and dismisses him for the day. Once Peru leaves, Urin begins consuming the poisonous herbs himself. As he ingests them, messages from the status screen appear, but soon he reaches his physical limit and the system instructs him to practice breathing meditation. He follows the guidance, enduring the pain and stabilizing his body through focused meditation. By the next morning, Aaron walks into the room and finds Urin still meditating, but his body is transformed, becoming toned and muscular like that of a perfect bodybuilder. Aaron is stunned by the change, while Urin has successfully advanced the 10,000 Venom Energy technique to stage 2. Along with this breakthrough, he gains several martial arts skills and poison techniques. As Aaron stands there in awe, about to comment on Urin's physique, she suddenly notices a foul stench in the air. Yurin knows the reason, but hesitates to explain. The truth is that when someone's inner energy rises and their martial arts level progresses, the body expels large amounts of waste all at once. Since the unbearable odor is clearly coming from him, Yurin offers to open a window, but Eren quickly shouts at him not to open the door. Yurin takes a close. She tells her to head to the bathroom instead. After finishing his bath, Yurin and Eren head out together. Yurin feels pleased with himself, having just acquired a new skill, Soyong footwork. It originates from the Tang family and is a flawless technique for speed, assassination, and evasion. Yurin is thrilled to be learning abilities that he had only ever seen in wuxia novels. He becomes so overjoyed that he loses himself in thought while walking down the road, until Eren snaps him back to reality. Eren asks why he is suddenly walking like a drunk and wonders if he is unwell, but Yurin assures her that he feels perfectly fine. Despite this, he continues practicing his new footwork while moving forward, still appearing tipsy on the road. Eren then asks if he really intends to go to the first training hall for practice that day. She warns him about the knights there, but Yurin tells her not to worry. He explains that he only plans to observe how the knights conduct their daily drills. Not long after, they reach the training hall where, just as expected, knights are practicing swordsmanship while shouting loudly like maniacs. The moment Yurin and Eren step inside, the knights are stunned. At first, they don't recognize the handsome figure walking behind Eren, since his appearance has changed so drastically. Eventually, they realize it is Yurin, the Lord's son, and they can hardly believe how much weight he has lost. Many assume he must have used sorcery to slim down so quickly. While they whisper among themselves, Yurin can clearly hear every word thanks to his inner energy. Eren then directs his attention to a large young man training at the front. She explains that he is still a trainee knight, but with his excellent form, he is bound to advance to the rank of junior knight very soon. Yurin takes a closer look and soon realizes the young man is Cried. He is one of the important figures in the novel, later becoming an ally of the main protagonist. Yurin had never known much about Cried's past before he met the hero, but now he feels satisfied to discover that Cried is within the mansion. This might prove useful for him in the future. Still, for now, his attention is on something else. Almost every knight in the training hall despises him, with many harboring the desire to see him dead. Yurin studies them quietly, wondering if they might serve as his test subjects. He grabs a sword and decides to begin with a poison called Prolonged Poison. It remains at level 1, but once ingested, it spreads rapidly through all internal organs. Activating the poison, he strikes one of the knights with it from a distance. The knight collapses onto the ground as his companions rush over, asking if he is all right. They wonder if he needs to run to the toilet, but he refuses, writhing in agony. The knights, realizing the gravity of the situation, suggest calling for a priest. Suddenly, however, the knight springs back to his feet, declaring that the pain has completely vanished. His friends stare in disbelief, questioning if he had simply been playing around. Though the knight insists he truly suffered, no one takes him seriously. Satisfied with the experiment, Yurin decides to test another ability, Soul-Killing Smoke. This poisonous mist generates illusions that spark terror and confusion within a certain radius. As the knights continue scolding their comrade for faking his pain, Yurin releases the smoke. Instantly, panic sets in as they hallucinate a terrifying monster looming before them, ready to devour them alive. The knights scream, collapse to the ground, and even soil themselves in fear while Yurin watches, laughing at the chaos. Meanwhile, Eren looks on in bewilderment, completely unsure of what is happening. The situation worsens for the affected knights as several terrifying monsters appear before their eyes, tormenting them endlessly. Once Yurin has had enough amusement, he lifts the illusion, not wanting to wait until the knights begin attacking one another in confusion. The group erupts into arguments, each insisting that the others still look like monsters. Deciding he has completed enough testing for the day, Yurin is satisfied with how everything turned out. Yurin then tells Eren that it is time for them to leave. Eren, surprised, questions this since they have accomplished nothing meaningful since arriving. Yurin dismisses her concerns, claiming that the training hall is far too noisy and suggests heading instead to the 4th training hall. Before they can move, however, one of the maids appears to inform them that a guest has just arrived at the mansion. Curious, Yurin wonders who it could be and soon learns that his fiancée, Ilya Marcus, has come to visit. Yet while waiting for him, Ilya already intends to end their engagement. The moment Yurin enters the room, however, her resolve falters. Her cheeks flush red, and all the words she had prepared to break things off are scattered, replaced instead with uncertainty and questions. Prior to entering, Yurin had carefully analyzed the situation. He knows Ilya is skilled with her fists, and, in the original story, this is the point where she demanded they part ways. The Yurin of the novel stubbornly refused to accept it. But this time, Ilya is caught off guard. When her eyes meet him, she is utterly stunned. She blurts out, asking who he even is. Yurin, taken aback, calmly tells her that it is none other than him. Ilya, still in disbelief, trembles as though she is seeing a stranger. Yurin reassures her, telling her it has simply been a while since they last met. Ilya confesses that she had heard rumors about his drastic weight loss, though she dismissed them as lies. Now, seeing him in person, she is shocked. It has not even been 2 months since she left, and she cannot understand how he could have changed so drastically in such a short time. Yurin reveals that his transformation was the result of intense training. The revelation startles Ilya, and Yurin goes on to explain that after she defeated him before, he began re-evaluating his life choices. That humiliation pushed him to change. Ilya, suspicious, asks if his goal is revenge. Yurin denies it. Then, unexpectedly, Yurin does something that takes her completely by surprise. He drops to both knees and bows deeply before Ilya, thanking her sincerely. The sight stuns her, unable to comprehend seeing her fiancé kneeling in such a way. Yurin admits that his transformation is all thanks to her. He apologizes for their past and assures her that if she still wishes to end their engagement, he will accept it. Ilya, overwhelmed, can hardly believe what she is witnessing and begins to question whether this man before her is truly the same Yurin she once knew. To her further shock, Yurin openly calls himself trash. Though he knows much of the blame lies with the fool who once inhabited his body, he still takes responsibility. What drives his earnest plea for forgiveness is more than guilt. He recognizes Ilya's true worth. She is not just a heroine, but a bearer of the Sword Queen trait, which allows her strength to grow endlessly alongside her own willpower. In the story's future, she even saves the fallen hero and cuts down the main villain, all because of this trait. Yurin has no concern whether the engagement continues. What matters is mending their bond and securing her as an ally. Ilya, her guard still high, asks if he truly means his words. He confirms he does. Yet this does not satisfy her. She demands that he swear upon it. Her aura bursts forth, sharp and suffocating, making her presence terrifying. Yurin is taken aback, astonished by the sheer weight of her power, though something about this moment feels strangely familiar to him. Ilya declares that he must vow never to return to his old ways. If he dares to break that oath, she herself will be the one to kill him. Hearing this, Yurin is shaken, recognizing those very words as the same ones Ilya once spoke to the story's protagonist, not to him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he resolves to prove his sincerity. He activates the 10,000 poisons, and the raw energy surges from his body, overwhelming and consuming Ilya's aura entirely. Yurin assures Ilya that he swears never to return to his old ways. Ilya's face flushes red from embarrassment, though she manages to compose herself, warning him that she will be watching closely. She makes it clear, one more mistake and their engagement will end. Yurin is taken aback, unable to believe she hasn't broken things off already. Later, when Ilya visits Willington in his chambers, he too is shocked to learn that she has chosen not to end the engagement. The Marquis, confused, directly asks Ilya why she has decided to give Yurin another chance. Ilya explains that her father had always told her people cannot change. Yet when she heard rumors of Yurin's transformation, she grew curious, wondering if he had somehow reverted to the weak and gentle boy he once was in his childhood. To her surprise, the Yurin she encountered was not weak at all, but entirely different. So much so that she chose to take the risk of trusting him once again. Still, she warns the Marquis that if Yurin ever falls back into his old ways, she will not hesitate to beat him to death. Relieved, the Marquis agrees and encourages her to take good care of Yurin. As Ilya rises to leave, the Marquis urges her to stay for a few more days. She refuses, reminding him that she had already told her father she planned to end the engagement. The Marquis suggests she at least watch Yurin's training before she departs, but Ilya declines again, saying she doesn't want to distract him. Later that evening, the Marquis summons Yurin to his chambers. As soon as his son enters, Willington jokingly asks him who he is, startling Yurin. Before he can panic, his father laughs, revealing he was only teasing. Placing a firm pat on Yurin's shoulder, Willington praises him for the effort he has been putting into his training. He then asks if Yurin knows why he has been called, and Yurin guesses it must be about his nightly training sessions. His father is pleased that Yurin has finally grown wiser. The Marquis then decides it is time for him to inherit the swordsmanship passed down in the Rock's family. But Yurin interrupts, saying he has something important to share about his knight training. Instead of becoming a knight, he shocks his father by announcing he wants to master the art of throwing rather than swordsmanship. Hearing this, the Marquis explodes in anger, refusing outright. He insists that such a skill is nothing more than a cheap trick used by thieves, and with throwing knives, Yurin will never be able to pierce a knight's armor, let alone the hide of dangerous monsters. Yurin, however, counters with a bold proposal. He suggests they make a bet. He wagers that he can defeat the fearsome beast Borik using only a dagger. The Marquis frowns, convinced his son is being foolish. He warns that to harm a Borik, a warrior's blade must be infused with aura to break through its scales. No matter how much Yurin trains, even for 100 years, throwing knives alone will never work. Still, Yurin insists on the bet. Intrigued by his son's determination, the Marquis finally agrees and asks what Yurin intends to stake. Yurin declares that if he manages to slay the Borik with a dagger, he will be allowed to decide his own path of training. But if he fails, he will submit fully to his father's will. With that, the deal is sealed. Relieved, Yurin returns to his room, thankful that Eren hasn't revealed anything about his secret training yet. Since the practical test is scheduled for the next day, Yurin will guide him in breaking through the Borik's tough scales. To prepare himself, Yurin takes a drastic step. He eats poisonous herbs in advance, arming his body against toxins in case the fight takes a deadly turn. He plans to advance his divine arts to the 3rd star. At that moment, Eren enters with a message from the Marquis. The Marquis has chosen the time and place. The test will take place at noon the next day in the first training hall. Yurin then asks if she knows about the bet, and Eren confirms, but she isn't the only one. Word is spread across the entire estate, and everyone is mocking Yurin, convinced he'll wet himself the moment he faces the Borik. Eren explains that the household is gossiping with amusement, certain that he will fail since he's already seen as the #1 public enemy. This weighs on Yurin, so he asks if everyone will be watching the test. Eren replies that the Marquis allowed it, so the training hall will be full. Yurin sighs at the thought, but asks her opinion. With her head lowered, Eren assures him that tomorrow will be his day. That night, Yurin follows through with his promise, raising his divine arts to the 3rd star. The following day, he is stunned to see the training hall packed like an arena, filled with people waiting for the spectacle. Before the test begins, Yurin tells his father he is ready, but he cannot ignore the crowd surrounding them. His father explains that he originally told only the court magician, yet somehow the news spread through the estate. The Marquis then urges Yurin to perform well and not bring shame upon himself. Once everything is prepared, the magician initiates the summoning ritual to call forth the Borik. Smoke fills the hall, and a monstrous figure emerges. Yurin's excitement grows at the sight. This was a beast he himself had once written into existence. The Borik turns out to be an ocean creature, standing about 150 centimeters tall. As soon as it steps out of the summoning circle, the audience begins to panic. Yurin is shocked when he sees the Borik, a monster he once created on a whim while eating rockfish sashimi at a restaurant, unable to think of any other ideas. He shows no fear, since to him it looks like a harmless creature if only its arms were missing. Out of nowhere, the monster charges at him. It nearly catches him off guard while he is distracted, but thanks to his swift movements, he dodges just in time. Realizing the Borik won't stop its assault, Yurin decides to fight seriously. He draws one of his throwing knives to test the strength of its scales. To his surprise, a glowing mark suddenly appears on the Borik's body, hinting at a possible weak spot. Trusting his judgment, he throws the knife at the marked area. The blade pierces through, causing the monster to shriek in pain before collapsing lifelessly. Yurin feels unsatisfied that the fight ended with just one strike. Meanwhile, the Marquis and the gathered crowd stare in disbelief. Moments later, The entire hall bursts into cheers, celebrating Urin's victory. The magician steps forward to declare the Boric defeated. The Marquis hurries to Urin and demands to know how he brought it down in a single hit. Urin responds awkwardly, claiming he simply aimed well and struck the right spot. The Marquis refuses to believe it, saying such an outcome makes no sense. Before the debate grows, Urin interrupts, asking if the Marquis intends to break his word. At that point, the magician explains that Urin's dagger hit the Boric's arm where there were no scales. Enraged, the Marquis shouts that Urin only won through luck. Urin calmly replies that luck or not, he still won a bet. As he turns to leave, his father orders him to repeat the test once more. Urin refuses to agree until the Marquis raises the stakes. And when he hears that Ur has won the second round, Ur is thrilled at the chance to make a wish, but the Marquis suddenly changes the rules, declaring that instead of the Boric, his opponent will be a knight. Urin's father asks if he is fine with the new arrangement, and Urin agrees, not caring who he faces since it might even be Karox, though he decides not to push it because he still needs Karox to provide Peru with money for the poison. The Marquis then suggests starting with a trainee knight, and when Urin asks to choose his opponent, his father allows it. So, without hesitation, he names Cride. Soon after, Cride rushes into the arena, bows before the Marquis, and pledges to follow any command. Willington points to his son and tells Cride to teach him a proper lesson, which shocks Cride at first. But when the Marquis questions him, he insists he can do it. Suddenly, Urin boldly declares that he will throw only 3 daggers at Cride, and if Cride blocks them all, he wins the match. The Marquis, astonished at this arrogance, orders Cride to humble his son, while Cride's friends laugh from the stands, joking that if he loses, he will miss dinner. One of Cride's friends even jokes that he will have to run 100 laps around the training ground if he loses, and just before the match begins, Urin hears a girl's voice from the crowd cheering him on, which gives him the motivation to draw his dagger and prepare to face Cride. As the duel is about to start, several glowing target points suddenly appear across Cride's body, startling Urin, who worries he might kill him the same way he killed the Boric, something he cannot allow to happen. So he decides to change his approach. With a surge of strength, he hurls the dagger so forcefully that it crashes against Cride's blade with a sound like cannon fire, stunning the spectators as the weapon clatters to the ground. And the Marquis, astonished, picks it up and wonders how an ordinary dagger could produce such power. The blow dents Cride's sword and leaves him visibly shaken, while Urin coolly remarks that he is only warming up, warning Cride that the next strike will be far more serious. Convinced that Cride will not die because he is a supporting character, Urin unleashes his second throw, and though Cride tries to block it, the impact explodes with a deafening bang and a cloud of smoke that shocks the entire arena. When the haze clears, Cride's sword lies shattered and useless, slipping from his trembling hands, and the Marquis storms over to demand a private talk with his son, only for Urin to calmly remind him that the match is not finished, since he still has 1 dagger left. Willington's eyes widen in fear as he calls out to Ur, but Urin suggests they hear from Cride himself, and walking up to him, he orders the trainee knight to lift his head and asks if he wants to end the battle like this. He scolds Cride, reminding him that as a knight in training, he should never accept such a pathetic result, since finishing things properly is the true path of a knight, then presses him again on whether he is ready to give up, and after stammering nervously, Cride finally demands that he be given a new sword. Cride's aura bursts forth and swirls around him, showing his determination not to retreat, and everyone, even the Marquis, is stunned that although Cride is still only a knight in training, he has already awakened his aura. This, in fact, is exactly what Urin had wanted from the start, since Cride possesses the Berserker trait, a power that only emerges when pushed to the breaking point. With his defenses strengthened by awakening his aura and entering Berserker mode, Urin decides it is time to test a higher-level technique. Cride, brimming with newfound strength, urges Urin to throw his dagger, while the Marquis marvels that Cride's aura is strong enough to rival that of a high-ranking knight, leaving him curious about how his son will respond. Urin takes aim and releases his dagger, but unlike the previous throws, this one spins unusually slowly as it approaches, confusing Cride, who grows furious, convinced Urin is mocking him. Raising his sword in anger, he tries to intercept the weapon, but before he can land a strike, the dagger curves past his blade and pierces into his shoulder. Although the dagger slows before reaching the bone, the impact still sends waves of excruciating pain through him, dropping him to his knees in a scream that shocks the spectators. Because the attack had seemed so slow, Cride's fellow knights accuse him of faking his agony to avoid embarrassing urine, unaware that urine had infused the throw with concentrated internal energy, which is why the pain is overwhelming. At that moment, the Marquis calls out to urine, insisting they speak, but urine calmly reminds him that he has already won the bet. Walking over to Cride, urine places his hand on the wound and begins drawing out the lingering internal energy from his shoulder, causing the pain to vanish instantly and leaving Cride utterly stunned. Cride stands up and bows to urine, thanking him and apologizing for assuming that the slow dagger throw was meant to belittle him, admitting instead that the technique is an impressive art that must have taken years to master, which convinces him that urine has been hiding his true strength all along. Leaning closer, Cride whispers, asking if urine has been concealing his power because a secret faction is targeting the Marquis's house. And at that moment, urine realizes why Cride always seems to be alone. He is the kind of person fascinated by conspiracy theories. With renewed conviction, Cride bows again, vowing to aid urine whenever he chooses to fight this supposed secret organization. And thanks to their brief encounter, Cride's favorability toward urine suddenly rises to 26%. Urine is pleased by this and assures him they will meet again. And as he walks away, Cride shouts that he will spread the news that urine is a good man. Urine, however, is quietly satisfied for another reason, since winning Cride over brings him closer to his goal of one day destroying the Night Order by himself. At that moment, Aaron approaches Ur and praises him for a job well done, then asks about the strange new technique she has never seen before. Ur explains it quickly and asks her opinion, and Aaron admits she too would have lost against it if she had been caught off guard, though she insists she could now block it. Aaron recognizes that this is not mere bravado, since Aaron possesses the clear mirror trait, which lets her adapt instantly to new situations and techniques. Curious, he then asks Aaron if she is truly content with her current life, pointing out that if she were not serving as his attendant, she could easily become a high-ranking knight, and she reacts with surprise, demanding to know why he would suddenly ask her such a question. Later, when Urine meets with the Marquis in his office, Willington yells at his son to call him father whenever they are alone, insisting that such formality makes their relationship feel too distant. Urine awkwardly complies and addresses the Marquis as father, after which the man immediately questions him about the technique he used during the duel, explaining that he has searched through the family archives and found nothing resembling it. And considering that Urine has only been training for a month, it should be impossible for him to master such a skill so quickly. Pressing for answers, the Marquis demands the truth, but Urine cannot possibly reveal it. So he resorts to a story he had already prepared for such a situation, claiming that while searching the archives for training methods, a book from the top shelf fell on him. According to Urine, the book bore no title, only a strange engraved pattern. And when he opened it, a light burst forth, shining on his face, before the knowledge of a technique entered his mind and the book vanished. Stunned, the Marquis immediately interprets this as the legendary grimoire, a medium used by great mages to pass down their arts by engraving them into books. And since the archives hold countless volumes collected by their ancestors, even he cannot possibly know them all, so he accepts his son's explanation. Convinced that fate has blessed Urine with extraordinary fortune, he declares that he will honor his word, allowing Urine to forego swordsmanship training, and then turns to the other promise, asking what wish his son desires. To his shock, Urine boldly asks for the position of heir, leaving his father speechless. And when Urine notices his hesitation, he questions whether the Marquis is unable to grant it. His father admits that it is within his authority to do so, but his expression betrays deep reluctance, for such a declaration would stir fierce opposition within the Marquisate, especially from Kina. Understanding the burden it would place on him, Urine relents, telling his father that he will yield this time, despite the wish being within reach. The Marquis is relieved by Urine's decision and thanks him, while in truth Urine has no interest in being the successor, since that would mean spending every day with his father, learning how to manage the Marquisate, which would strip away his freedom. What Urine truly desires is to sharpen his skills and explore the world on his own adventures. Seeing that Urine has yielded the heirship, his father asks him to name another wish, and Urine declares that he intends to create his own Night Order. Shocked, the Marquis listens as Urine reveals his plan to appoint Aaron and Cride as his knights, and because this request is far less burdensome than naming him heir, the Marquis agrees. Urine bows in thanks, and his father then inquires about finding him a new butler, since all of the existing ones are already serving others. Urine explains that he already has someone in mind, Peru, a worker from the kitchen, but asks that it appear as though the Marquis himself appointed him rather than it being Urine's personal choice. Startled, the Marquis asks if something is wrong, but Urine deflects, promising to explain later, and since his trust in Urine is steadily growing, the Marquis lets the matter drop. In fact, Urine notices that his father's affinity has suddenly risen to 74%, which even surprises him, though he assumes it is because he is his son. Later, Urine gathers Eren and Cried to inform them that they are now officially part of his Night Order and urges them to continue their training diligently. He also introduces Peru as their new butler, assuring them that he will attend to their needs. Privately, however, Urine had already explained to Eren that Peru is actually a spy sent by Kina and Kerox to assassinate him, which is why he intends to keep him close. Though shocked, Eren questioned Urine's decision, but he reassured her that Peru listens only to him, eventually convincing her to accept the plan. Back at the meeting, Cried raises his hand, and upon being given permission to speak, he asks why the Night Order has no vice-captain, pointing out that such a role should be held by someone with exceptional skill. Cried argues that Eren is unworthy of joining the Night Order because she looks small and frail. But before he can continue, Ur interrupts, agreeing that the vice-captain should indeed be strong. And to settle the matter, he proposes a duel between them. To Cried's shock, Eren defeats him swiftly, leaving him sprawled on the ground. And while he is still recovering, she calmly critiques his technique, pointing out that his attacks are too straightforward and easy to read. Rather than being offended, Cried accepts her words with humility, assuring her that he will take the advice seriously. Since Eren won, Ur declares that the position of vice-captain is hers, stunning Peru, who had not expected her to be named leader of the Night Order. The others applaud Eren's promotion, and before long Peru excuses himself to prepare dinner. Once Peru is some distance away, Urine decides to test a new technique that lets him communicate telepathically, calling Peru's name directly into his mind. Startled, Peru turns back, only to hear Urine calling him again and again until he nearly loses his composure, at which point Urine scolds him for acting strangely. When Peru nervously asks if this is some form of black magic, Urine clarifies that it is only a communication spell, though the experience convinces Peru that his master is an extraordinary being, someone who resists poison and wields bizarre abilities beyond explanation. Urine dismisses his concerns, telling him to believe whatever theory he likes, but then pointedly asks whether the poison he requested is finished. Peru confirms that it is, explaining that the concoction, known as Snake Mind, is made from the venom of 100 vipers and was incredibly difficult to produce, even for him. Pleased, Urine orders Peru to add a heavy dose of it to the chair and soup he will be served, and though terrified, Peru trembles as he acknowledges his master's command. Later that night, Ur realizes that ever since reaching the 3rd star, his progress has slowed down because his internal energy is not rising as quickly as he expected, and since he does not know when the world crisis will begin, he decides it is time to leave the Marquisate. Soon after, he approaches his father to announce that he wishes to go away for a while, and when asked how long he plans to be gone, he replies that it will only be for a week so as not to arouse suspicion. The Marquis has no objection, as Urine has been training diligently, but he insists on assigning him an escort. Urine shocks him by saying he does not need one, which immediately provokes his father's protest, reminding him of the status he holds within the family. Urine tries to reason that he is only visiting nearby villages and therefore does not require protection, but the Marquis cuts him off, warning that the world has grown increasingly dangerous, and even though Urine has grown stronger, he still worries about the risk of poison. Realizing it will be difficult to persuade him further, Urine changes his approach and pretends to comply, assuring his father that he will accept an escort, which pleases the Marquis, who then asks when he plans to leave. Urine answers that he will depart in 2 days, and with that, the Marquis agrees to prepare an escort for him, unaware that Urine has no intention of waiting and actually plans to sneak out the following day. That evening, Urine summons Peru to his chambers and explains that he is leaving on a journey, but since he has no money, he needs to borrow some from him. Though reluctant at first, Peru quickly caves in when he senses the ominous aura radiating from Urine, and then Urine asks if he still has the subspace pouch he once saw him carrying. This pouch, a familiar trope in fantasy novels, is a mysterious container capable of holding nearly a ton of cargo despite its small size. Peru has no choice but to hand over his subspace pouch to Urine as well, which makes Urine pleased since he now does not need to carry a bag on his journey. And afterward, he gives Peru a lump of dried leaves disguised as an antidote, claiming that it is a month's supply to suppress the poison in his body. Playing his card cleverly, Urine praises Peru for being a loyal servant and promises that he will soon provide him with a permanent cure, which leaves Peru both fearful and hopeful. The next morning, Urine writes a letter and secretly sneaks out, expecting not to encounter anyone. But to his surprise, he runs into an old gardener who radiates a powerful aura, which Urine finds unusual, though he continues on his way without stopping. Soon he reaches the Tower of Magic, enters the building, and is approached by an attendant who asks what he needs, to which Urine replies that he wants to use a warp. When asked if he has ever used it before, he admits he has not, and the attendant explains that they use a mileage point system similar to airplanes. When Urine mentions that his destination is Castle, the attendant informs him that due to the long distance, the fee is 50 gold, which Urine already anticipated would be expensive, though he is grateful that Peru gave him enough money. After being told to pay and sign the ticket, Urine writes down a fake name, choosing Poland, a name he often used in online games, and after finishing the registration, he is escorted to the chamber containing the warping machine. The attendant explains that when he hears a knock, it will signal that he has arrived, and as Urine steps onto the machine, it suddenly emits a burst of lightning, and moments later, he finds himself at his destination where another attendant greets him, announcing that he has reached Castle, leaving Urine astonished because the transition felt like nothing at all. The old man explains that the Tower of Magic purposely designed the warping machine to create a warping sensation, which surprises Urine because of the name they chose for the effect, and he wonders if he himself might have mistaken it for a comfort feature instead. After wishing him well, the attendant sends him on his way, and once Urine exits the Tower of Magic, he finds himself in Castle, a region in the west far different from his homeland, filled with many people and an unfamiliar atmosphere. Despite the change in scenery, Urine's focus is on finding the blacksmith alley. So he asks a passerby for directions and begins searching, but after checking several alleys, he still cannot find what he is looking for. And though it is getting late, he pushes on to one last alley. There he discovers a blacksmith shop and enters, asking the attendant if he knows someone by the name Unicorn Forge, only to be told that no such person exists in the area, which makes Urine doubt himself until the man casually adds that he is actually considering naming his shop that. Intrigued, Urine activates his creator's eye on the man and learns that his name is Jurino, a capable blacksmith, which makes Urine grin like a child at the realization that he has found the right place. Excited, Urine requests to see the weapons Jiren has crafted, and the blacksmith gladly shows him his collection, while Urine inquires about how business has been going. Jiren admits that because his skills are not yet at the highest level, his shop in the back alley receives little attention, as most customers come in, glance around, and leave without buying, leaving him uncertain how much longer he can sustain himself. As Urine examines the weapons, his attention is caught by two particular swords hanging on the wall. One is a Wind Spirit sword blessed by the Wind Spirit Sylph, which boosts attack speed, movement speed, and agility, while the other is a Flame Spirit Greatsword imbued with the blessing of the Lower Fire Spirit Salamander, enhancing stamina, strength, and endurance. Urine asks Jiren if he crafted the swords, and when Jiren confirms, he explains that he considers them failures because after completion they became so heavy that even strong men struggle to lift them, making them impossible to sell. Urine, however, understands that the weight is not Jiren's fault, but rather the result of unworthy hands touching the blades, since the swords are meant to bestow immense power only on those deemed worthy. Knowing this, Urine surprises Jiren by declaring he will buy them, leaving the blacksmith stunned, for while Jiren sees them as failures, Urine knows they are perfect for Eren and Kryde, even though he is still searching for other treasures. Abruptly, Urine asks if Jiren has any rusted weapons, and though confused, Jiren brings out a collection he had dismissed as useless. Urine is pleased to find them in their original condition and picks up a dagger, announcing that he wants it. Shocked, Jiren explains he never forged that dagger. It had simply appeared in his storage room, and is bewildered when Urine insists on taking it along with the swords. Concluding that Urine only desires defective goods, Jiren offers to part with the dagger for just 2 gold coins, practically giving it away, and Urine gladly accepts, secretly aware of its true value. At that moment, Yurin realizes that his interest lies not only in the weapons but in the blacksmith himself, so he proposes that Jiren close his failing shop and work for him instead. Startled by the sudden offer, Jiren admits he had considered shutting down but never imagined receiving such a proposal. Seizing the moment, Yurin introduces himself grandly as the invincible spear and protector of the South before revealing his true name. Stunned, Jiren realizes he is in the presence of Maris's son and immediately kneels, apologizing profusely, unable to believe that someone so noble would step foot into his shabby shop. Yurin urges Jiren to stand, but the blacksmith refuses, insisting that he speak while his head remains bowed to the ground. Realizing he cannot change his mind, Yurin begins talking, and after listening, Jiren asks why someone like him would be offered such help. Yurin replies that he sees talent in him, shocking Jiren, who cannot believe it since he has been scolded daily by his master and never considered himself skilled. Jiren explains that he has visited other forges, but Jiren stands out, and when Jiren asks why, Yurin tells him it is because of his sincerity, pointing out the way he pours detail and care into his work. Yurin adds that one day he will awaken as a rare talent, a claim he invents on the spot, but hopes Jiren believes. To his relief, Jiren does, and he agrees to follow him, admitting that Yurin seems nothing like the rumors he had heard. Seizing the moment, Yurin decides to reveal something astonishing and pricks his finger with the dagger, commanding it to awaken. Before Jiren's wide eyes, the weapon rises into the air, glowing with a white aura, and he realizes it is a legendary relic of myriad forms known as Agnes. Stunned, the blacksmith struggles to comprehend the sight, for the dagger is no ordinary weapon, but an ego sword fated to belong to the story's protagonist. The system then asks Yurin if he wishes to form a contract with Agnes, and when he agrees, the blade shifts into a cluster of water molecules as a girl's voice echoes out, demanding to know who seeks to bind with her. Agnes mocks Yurin as talentless and grows irritated when she senses no mana within him, scoffing at his weakness before questioning how he even knew of her presence and a release spell. With steady composure,